It's becoming really weird now. It's strange. It's stupid. Additionally, Caitlin Clark made the first formal announcement about it. She's leaving, her time with the squad is finished, even though the Indiana Fever season is still running strong. Additionally, the explanation is caught on camera. It's been played 1,000 times. All-American basketball experts has investigated it, because what happened during that time revealed something that could no longer be hidden. Matchup with Chicago, Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell collaborated with the intention of discrediting, weaken and ultimately ban the greatest player in the club's history.
The fact that Stephanie White refuses to credit Caitlin Clark, especially in front of the team, like she already didn't want to give her no credit for the game winner versus the Washington Mystics when she bailed her out. Now Caitlin Clark bailed you out again, you and Kelsey Mitchell, but for whatever reason, you want to keep trying to credit Kelsey Mitchell at the podium. It's weird. It's odd. It makes no.
This was not a decision made by a coach. This narrative had been too much for Caitlin Clark. You have to understand the pattern of disrespect that had grown during the season to understand Caitlin Clark's choice to give up. It started in the locker room after a crucial victory in which rookie Caitlin Clark achieved a remarkable 30-point double-double. Stephanie White stood in front of the squad and would not even say her name.
Really good job. Okay, really good job. We weathered the storms. Okay, we came together. Y'all, I heard you more in huddle and in timeouts than I've heard you all year long. Right? That matters. That matters, right? The collective positivity, the collective accountability, talking each other up, that is huge.
There was absolutely no mention of Caitlin Clark. Her 30-point effort went unnoticed, just platitudes regarding collaboration and cooperation.
The way that we came together, going into overtime, coming together and finishing this game. Yes. All right, great job. That we grew today. Yep. We grew today. I'm proud.
We grew today. That is the message. Caitlin Clark did not save us. Our rookie didn't carry us. Superstar, just general praise for growth and cohesion. But things got worse. Stephanie White discovered her voice. When she went up to the stage for the news conference following the game, she had a lot to say, but it was unrelated to Clark. Caitlin.
I think I said this when C was drafted here. It's like when you have the bookends, when you have a point guard, and you have a center, that are special. You can build a team around that. And certainly then you add in Kelsey, who had already been here, and she had a quiet 19.
It was present. Everyone but Caitlin Clark received credit according to the formula and algorithm. She said that she had a center, bookends and a point guard. That's Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, but she turned to Kelsey right away. Kelsey Mitchell received a low score of 19. Stephanie White desired to share that story, but Kelsey Mitchell had nearly cost them the match. The Fever were ahead 5 points when Kelsey made a terrible layup attempt in the closing seconds. It was a needless, self-serving shot that might have cost them everything. Abandoned her leg. Point 3 was the new lead. As turmoil erupted, Stephanie White wanted to give herself credit for a composed 19. But it wasn't until the very end of that game, Caitlin Clark discovered the underlying plot against Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell. When the score was tied in overtime and all was on the phone, bringing the ball to Caitlin Clark was the play's objective. It was a simple pick-and-roll tactic that had worked well all season long, but Stephanie White changed it. Instead of performing the play as planned, White decided to force the ball to Kelsey Mitchell instead of Caitlin Clark, who made 11 of 11 free throws. Throw line and the obvious decision. It was known to Caitlin Clark. She was truthful. In confusion, she held up her hands. She had received one item and been promised another.
She checked in the game. It's the same play. Same play as last time. I'm going to come off this screen, get 2 free throws. We're going to walk out of this gym, right? Okay, call a timeout. We get the ball at half. They lied to Caitlin Clark. And then Stephanie White has to explain herself after she almost cost them.
They lied to Caitlin Clark. That is the critical moment. That's when everything broke. The ball was received by Kelsey Mitchell. Kelsey Mitchell dropped the pass. The asset was wasted. Prolonged overtime. Anarchy prevailed. As the camera moved to Caitlin Clark's face, everything became clear. She had completely lost faith in Stephanie White. Every hope. She was totally confident that this coach would help her.
Caitlin Clark, her hands up. What the heck happened? Kelsey Mitchell drops the pass. She knows they messed up. They try to get cute. Why would you
behave that way? Because Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell had made a decision. A decision declaring that credit is not awarded to Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark does not receive the final shot. Caitlin Clark is not the hero. Kelsey Mitchell would always be a part of the narrative. No matter how poorly she did. No matter how self-serving her decisions were. No matter how close she was to losing the game, because Stephanie and Kelsey Mitchell. White understood a fundamental idea. If Caitlin Clark remained the sole contributor to victories. If she kept posting numbers that broke records. At last, she would realize that she didn't need any of them if she persisted in preserving the franchise, then she would leave. As a result, they planned to disparage her. To minimize her role, despite the fact that it was nonsensical from a basketball perspective. I decided to publicize Kelsey Mitchell. Caitlin Clark kept an eye on everything. She saw the trend, she knew the storyline. Stephanie White refused to even say her name in the locker room after scoring 30 points and grabbing 7 rebounds. Stephanie White claimed credit to Kelsey Mitchell for a game in the podium rather than acknowledging her own work. Where Kelsey had made a terrible shot that nearly lost them everything, Stephanie White also ran the ball to Kelsey Mitchell in the final moments of overtime, when Caitlin Clark was unquestionably the superior choice and fundamental basketball. The player who was 11 of 11 from the free throw line should get the ball, according to logic.
Clark has lost all faith in Stephanie White and her play calling.
Look at it.
She lied to her. She checked in the game as the same play. Same play as last time. I'm going to come off this screen, get 2 free throws. We're going to walk out of this gym, right? Okay, call a timeout. We get the ball at half. They lied to Caitlin.
That was the moment. That's when Caitlin Clark knew she was done. She realized that this wasn't about developing herself. Thus, she was leaving as soon as her contract allowed. Winning titles has nothing to do with this. This concerned a resentful veteran player and an insecure coach who was unable to accept that the team's face was now a 22-year-old rookie.
Caitlin Clark, look at her face. She's lost all hope, all faith in Stephanie White. She said no. You know the play. Oh my gosh, I can't even believe this. And then it gets worse. Look at the play they drew up. Throw it off the backboard? Come on. Caitlin Clark has no idea what the heck just went on.
This is crazy.
Even less rational was the next drama they devised, with Caitlin Clark remaining, toss it off the backboard in OT. Confused, and disinterested in the tactic, this was not a basketball contest. It was sabotage. The song became even more irritating because of this. Stephanie White's goals were completely at odds with the music of the actual numbers. Caitlin Clark finished with a 30-point double-double, 7 rebounds and 32 points. Based on certain reports, she was 11 of 11 from the free throw line. The highest scorer was her. It was she who invented the have fun. She gave the Fever a chance to prevail. Kelsey Mitchell quietly scored 19 points on 7 of 17 attempts. They nearly lost the game due to her self-serving last-minute shot. On an evening when the league's leading, she played a supporting role as the player took control.
Kelsey Mitchell was 7 of 17 for 19 points. Bro, she did. If this lady not scoring, she don't do nothing. She did have maybe this was a career high, 3 assists. I don't know. But like, you don't need to try to insert Kelsey Mitchell in.
It's not necessary to try to fit Kelsey Mitchell into every circumstance, but Stephanie White did it in a frantic and relentless way, because Stephanie White would need to come to terms with something different. If she acknowledged that Caitlin Clark was the squad's leader, that she made a difference, and that she was the reason they were triumphant, she didn't know how to coach a famous person. She didn't know how to become exceptionally skilled. Attempting to maintain control over a player who had outgrown her, she was an insecure coach.
Today was the Clark Show with Aaliyah Boston. The 2-man game as it's supposed to be. As it's supposed to be, the Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston 2-man pick and roll show, non-stop, unstoppable. What are you talking about, Kelsey?
Today was the Clark Show. That's the reality that was seen by all. The Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston led the offense. They wrote the plays, they scored the baskets, they won the game, but Stephanie White was unable to admit that. As a result, she wrote a narrative in which Kelsey Mitchell played a supporting part. Kelsey Mitchell's modest 19 was somewhat similar to Caitlin Clark's overpowering record accomplishment. On poor effectiveness. At the conclusion of the game, Caitlin Clark had made up her mind. She was leaving Indiana as quickly as she could. She was tired of Stephanie White. She was tired of Kelsey Mitchell. An institution had become too much for her. That would prefer to disparage rather than respect its top star. The stats made it clear. On the game film, it was clear. The post-game interviews made this clear. Everyone could see what Stephanie White was doing. Everyone could see the scheme. Everyone knew that Caitlin Clark was being deliberately undermined. Most importantly, Caitlin Clark saw it as She heard Stephanie White refuse to even mention her name as she sat in the locker room.
Like, you didn't even mention her 30-point double-double. Didn't even mention it. Kelsey Mitchell was 7 of 17 for 19 points. Bro, she did. If this lady not scoring, she don't.
Not a single word, not one acknowledgement point. One of the best rookie performances ought to have been acknowledged in WNBA history, but silence prevailed instead. That silence taught Caitlin Clark all she needed to know.
You don't want to give Caitlin Clark any credit. You don't want to credit her in the locker room. None of that. You didn't mention her 32-point double-double with 7 rebounds. You mentioned none of it. You talked about everything but Caitlin Clark. Disgusting, bro.
It is disgusting. That is precisely what it is. A head coach who refuses to acknowledge her superstar generation. An accomplished teammate feels resentful of her accomplishments. An organization that places a high priority on internal strife over titles won. Caitlin Clark confirmed her decision that night. She would finish the season. She is a professional, after all, but at the end of the season, she had left to Kelsey Mitchell and Stephanie White was unable to understand Caitlin Clark was not being ridiculed. They were undervaluing themselves. The whole globe saw what happened throughout that game. It was seen by the fans. The media covered it. The media covered it. The basketball community understood it. Her head and her teammate. Caitlin Clark made a choice instead of allowing herself to be denigrated because her coach was constantly making fun of her. I'm leaving.